Everyone is enjoying the sessions today at the Business of Data Festival. Up next, I'm really pleased to be able to moderate a panel of thought leaders discussing the upcoming trends in data leadership and exactly what it takes to be a successful leader in 2022 and beyond. This is also the topic of discussion for our recently released report that we worked on with Cloudera, so be sure to check that out in the platform's resource area today or tomorrow. And of course, remember to get your questions in nice and early to make sure that we can answer them live here at the festival. With that, I am pleased to welcome my panel of experts here. So if everyone could just turn their screens on here, we are ready to go. And to start, I'm actually going to have you each introduce yourselves. I'll just call on you kind of based on where you have popped up on my screen, just to keep it simple. So Chun, if you want to kick off first, just let us know who you are, who you're with, and what you're currently working on.
Okay, good. Can everyone hear me well? Excellent. All right. So Chen Sharos, I head up the Enterprise Data Science Group here at Regions Bank. I am based in Alabama. My teams owns the AI roadmap and the end-to-end developments of data science and AI solutions for various different business group along with the support functions. So from consumer to wealth to corporate, as well as digital marketing, contact centers, various different support functions and fraud, for example. We provide data science solutions in a product-driven mindset that supports our business in providing them insights, actions, as well as scores. So happy to be here and look forward to a good discussion.
Welcome. Wonderful. Hannah, I'm going to come to you next to introduce yourself.
Hi there. My name is Hannah Smaltry.
Hannah,
I should pronounce it Hannah. It's okay. So I have been working in the data and analytics industry for a couple decades now. I started as a tech journalist covering specifically master data management, if you can believe it. And then I started covering the data and analytics platform industry. And now I work at Cloudera. I'm a senior director there and I focus on industry marketing, but my role is not that different from when I was a tech reporter. I talk more with Cloudera's customers and Cloudera's users about how they're using our platform, and particularly how they're using it within specific different vertical industries. So the types of data sources and problems and analytics that are used across industries. So Hannah Smaltry, I'm from Cloudera, and I'm just a data enthusiast and data nerd.
Welcome. Well, that's what we want to have here. I think that applies to all of us. Pawan, I'm going to come to you next. If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, who you're with, and a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Name is Pawan Verma. I'm the Chief Data Officer in Industrial and Commercial Bank of China. Been in this role for about 2 years. Prior to this, I spent 10 years in management consulting, 5 years in Deloitte, 5 years in EY. And before that, I was in the industry. I've been doing data work for about 17, 18 odd years, and I've seen the evolution from when there was no data management. All people thought about was data quality. From there till now, where we're talking about AI ML based data management. So I've seen all of that. Most of my work has always been in the regulatory side, finance, risk, compliance. I'm very excited to be here and be part of this panel.
Wonderful. Great to have you. And last but certainly not least, Sean.
Hey, everybody. Sean McCarthy, VP of Analytics for Good Sam Camping World. I've been in retail most of my professional career after I left academia, doing strategy and data and analytics and insights and running data science teams and all that fun stuff that we love. And yeah, primarily always reporting and working with the business side of things, with the end goal of always driving either revenue improvements or cost reductions by helping the businesses themselves understand their own operations better or marketing better.
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you all for joining us. Looking forward to this conversation. It's a very relevant topic for everyone. So one of the trends that came out of the research that we had done was that significant investment into data and analytics platforms and as well data pipeline automation. These are things that a lot of people are really focusing on at the moment. Does this align with what you're currently seeing, and what else do you think is important to invest in now in terms of your structure and your stack? Hannah, I'll come to you first on that one.
I knew you were going to call on me first. I work at a data platform vendor, so we always think it's good to invest in data platforms. But I think the bigger trend that I'm seeing and I'm excited about is companies investing in the strategy and resources and people, so people on this call, to build the foundation that's really required to manage data and deliver value from data. So I think these investments in your roles, in the teams, and are really important. So foundationally, the people and process part of it. Then, of course, we think it's important to invest in platforms, but more specifically, platforms and architectures that allow you to plan for flexibility and change. So at Cloudera, we talk about our hybrid data platform, which works across data centers and various clouds. But in general, whether it's Cloudera or another vendor, designing modern data architectures that allow for you to change, to move workloads around between different clouds or different kinds of locations, and to be really agile in your response to new opportunities or new challenges with data and analytics. So I would sum that up by saying, investing in strategy and resources is a great trend we're seeing. And then another trend toward investing in platforms and architectures that give you flexibility, that really provide a foundation for your data, but for planning for change.
Excellent. And Juan, being in the finance industry, are you seeing the same trends or anything that might be different?
Finance industry works a little bit differently, but I completely agree with Hannah that people are most important, because you can have all the good tools and all the processes, but if your people are not happy or they don't understand what they're doing, it's a problem. So I think investing in people is primary for me. I have a little bit different take on the infrastructure part, because many of the banks, they have invested a lot of money in whatever the infrastructure was, say 2 years back, when everybody was on the bandwagon to get a data lake. Now we're talking about data mesh and fabric, and I was in one of these panels earlier, and I asked a simple question: with what face can I go back to my management saying, I asked you 10 million, you gave me 10 million, I need another 10 million to change the infrastructure? I think investment is good, but it needs to be worth the time and the cost is going to take versus the advantages. From my perspective, and this is my personal opinion, not my bank's, for the new technologies, I would wait for another 2 years till it stabilizes and then invest. At least I use what I have invested in the past 3 years. That's my take, rather than jumping on the next bandwagon right away. Hannah, I'm not sure what you think about it, but that's my personal take. I cannot go back to them asking for more money because, hey, 3 years back, data lake was fancy. Now data fabric is the fancy. So.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. There's always going to be something new and fresh and exciting, and that's what keeps us moving forward. But at the same time, how do you prioritize all of those, especially within your organization, when you're justifying the spending on that end? Sean, wanted to get your thoughts as well, being in retail, and your experience in kind of same things or what that looks like for you.
Yeah. Sorry, is it?
Oh, sorry, I was asking Sean first, but either one of you can jump in.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Sean.
People, sometimes they call me Sean too. So Sean, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. So in the retail side of things, definitely seen the investment, because a lot of retail companies have had data for a while, but it was, a lot of their platforms they may have built in the 2000s, right, back in the big appliance days. And for the companies that like to stay on the bleeding edge, they may have done some on-prem data lake investment in the early 2010s. Saw plenty of that at the larger companies, and now obviously with the cloud, it makes it a lot easier for a lot of the small companies or smaller companies, right? Still with B's at the end of their revenues. But to invest to make those migrations to more modern technologies in the cloud, right? But I think the people and the process part of it is where the investment has to be done as well, not just on the tool, because oftentimes you've got these legacy systems that you've paid for. The tables are mature. The processes for the data support are mature. And so the staff to support all that has been reduced over time, right? Why? Because you didn't need as big of a staff to maintain something that's just a well-oiled machine. But now you want to move that well-oiled machine into something completely different. And oh, by the way, maybe you didn't do the greatest job of building out data dictionaries, data flows, and maps, and all those things. And so they live within the code. But now to get that moved and transferred over, you're now dealing with, how do I take all these legacy things that were very well and purposefully built, and there are all these definitions that live in people's heads, but aren't necessarily explicit. How do I now modernize that? So the people and process side of it has to be accounted for on that investment side, so that people, and you do yourselves favors as CIOs, CDOs, people who are being put in charge of these projects, to really get an understanding of the business landscape and how well that stuff is documented and exists, because that can eat up a lot of the time of what you invest in. Well, it should only take 6 months to move to the cloud, or 3 months, or 2 months, or well, maybe it's going to take your company 2 years, because everything you have, you let go of the people a long time ago that built everything and really understand how the data flows.
Yeah, and Sean S., we'll go that way. Coming back to you, I know you had some thoughts to share.
Yeah, no, I actually don't have a lot to add now that everybody really shares a lot of great insights. I would echo on what Hannah mentioned about the talent. I think as we are investing in technology, I do think that the talent needs to be at the very first stage or first thought. Technology is here to enable, but the vision, the strategy, and how do we want to grow our business needs to have a lot of buy-in by our talents. Then the technology can come in to enable and help us move to market faster, more nimble, as well as bring the return back much faster. So I just want to echo on that point.
Yeah, and actually, just one thing to add there. So I think the skills are shifting. We're definitely seeing companies, to your point, I think, Sean, sort of change the types of skills they invest in, less of the operational, but hopefully more strategic. And then kind of back to Pawan's point, the architecture has never been more important. So investing in skills about how do you use the things that maybe you did buy, and can you use those things in a more modern way? Can you use what you have, but design it differently, or design the process flows? So we're definitely seeing a shift in the types of skills that people have on their teams, moving more toward the architecture or toward the design kind of part of it, to really modernize without necessarily completely replatforming, which I appreciate and understand is extremely expensive, and time consuming and complex and all that stuff. But I think that this is a real opportunity for architects and clever design in our data flows.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, that brings us very well into the next question, Hannah. So you segued quite well for that. So wanting to talk about what the biggest challenge has been for each of you as you've modernized your enterprise data and analytics stack. Is it the people, the processes, justifying the spend, as Pawan touched on, or something else altogether? Pawan, I'll come to you first on that one.
I may end up repeating what I said, but my biggest challenge is, say, if my architecture was 10-year-old or even 8-year-old, right? I have a say that, it's old, it may break anytime, let's invest into something new, right? If your infrastructure is I'm in the still development phase. I haven't finished my development, right? So the biggest challenge is the industry, the vendors, or the technology is moving very fast, and trying to keep up with them is just difficult. Typically, if you have a waterfall approach, it takes 6 to 9 months to have something new installed. By the time there is next golden nugget on the floor which you want to pick up again, right? So that, I would say, is one of my challenges. The second thing is integration. There are many tools, and no matter what, sorry, Hannah, no matter what vendor tells you, there is nothing like a seamless integration. They talk about APIs and this and that, but you know what? When the rubber meets the road, that's where things start to fail. And all of us are data geeks. We know if your infrastructure is not integrated, it's just not going to work, because you are showing data quality on one hand, metadata on other platform, and if they are not talking to each other, it's no good for me. So integration becomes major challenge. Now, I cannot think of one vendor who does everything, who is best of the breed in every class, which means if I need best of the breed, I need to go to various vendors, and integrating them is my problem. And if I choose a vendor, which I will not name, one or two vendors are there who have a bigger stack of tooling, but then they have only one best of the breed. Rest everything is, I would say, subpar. So those two things, it's a little bit of a challenge for me in terms of infrastructure.
Yeah, Sean or Chun, either one of you want to jump in with your thoughts there?
You go ahead, Sean.
All right. Yeah, I am actually really glad that Pawan, you mentioned about integration. I absolutely agree with you. I think a lot of vendor does great job on a particular category. How to really seamlessly connect all the dots together is actually a challenge. I wanted to also kind of build on this point is on the biggest challenge, but to me also is the biggest opportunity, is to break the silos when it comes to bring the new thinking to the business. Technology and business should no longer be on two sides of the street talking to each other and bouncing, projects across the wall. Really to be working together at the get-go, where the technology is to serve the business need to create business values. How do we break the silos, bring those business idea to the beginning of the onboarding of technology, or understanding the business need, and bring those technology availability to the business process? Those to me are the biggest opportunities. I think we have the best time ever to really bring these two components together and leverage the technology to make our process, now new products, new services, new capability more faster to market than ever.
Chun, one thing you mentioned that I want to just speak a little bit more on, I think, about the silos, business and technology. I think data management, in my opinion, is a business problem, or business, whatever you want to call it. The business should be the driver, and IT should be the enabler, just like they have always been. But in some cases, when it's vendor-driven culture, it becomes the other way around, and you have this very fancy tool, and now you're going to business, let's figure out a use case. That situation is a problem. And I don't have that situation, but I think that's another challenge. I'm sure some of you may have something similar. So thanks, Jan.
Yeah, another thing I'd add as far as biggest challenges faced, it's just it's making sure when undertaking these kinds of massive transformations that the leadership who's ultimately signing off on it and is going to be upset if it doesn't go the way they preconceive it going in their minds, have a true understanding of what work is really involved in doing any of these kinds of transformations, right? If they came from companies where everything was already in place, mature, especially if they're on, if they're more on the CEO side, CFO side, chief marketing officer, chief, right, merchandise type off, right? If they're those types of people who are more business focused, operations focused, and they came from a company where all those things were already mature and well in place, and data was in a good place and well managed and all. And now they're at your company because they did such a great job and now you're trying to explain that, well, here's why our project's going to be much more challenging, and helping how you have those conversations as data people, trying to explain in plain English and with analogies and metaphors and everything else, how challenging doing what seems so simple data wise can be so difficult, because, your operational system doesn't actually log the data in the way you need at all for what the business question is, right? And so you actually, so all of those types of things, it's really making sure that both sides the people who have to deliver the project and are embarking on it, and the people who are ultimately going to benefit from it really have a good understanding of what is it being asked of this group and what can the current systems make possible, and what's the bridge that's got to be built to get to the transformational technology, not on the tech side itself, but the processes, the people, all the extra work that goes into digging into all the legacy systems and finding out what was going on inside. Those are the things that I think represent a great challenge, because what you can end up with is very frustrated leaders very quickly going, why isn't this going faster? Why isn't this as easy as it was? My other company, this was so easy. And if they don't have an understanding, well, this is why this company is different than your other company. And you have to know that about them too. What was their previous environment like? Right. And so understanding that can help you communicate with them. I think that alleviates a lot of headaches as far as how the meetings and the potential friction could go if that's not settled up front.
I think these are great points. I started covering data almost 20 years ago. In 2005, I launched a site called Search Data Management. And on our surveys, the top challenge was always integration. And here it is today, still integration. So no argument from me on that. And governance is the other one we hear about a lot that, it's been pervasive. There's tools now that make it slightly easier to solve the problem, but we use the term integration tax a lot, which is, can you at least reduce it by a few percentage points? It still might always be our top challenge. But, sort of how can we make it slightly less? And I love this point too about sort of really, especially even for executives thinking sort of integrations, it's as easy as a line on a PowerPoint slide. No. There's more to it, and really making sure that people understand sort of some of the conceptual things, the work involved, and the resources required to really make it happen and deliver it.
Yeah. Hannah, did you say the term integration tax? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I may use it somewhere. That's
Please,
very interesting.
That's why I brought that up, the integration
Thank you.
tax. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it also introduces risk. It introduces governance problems, but it's also, which I think banks really understand, is that all of those integration points can be risk points. They can, be complex also, but yeah.
And the most important, and I'm thinking from normal tax perspective, everybody has to do it, but nobody likes doing it. So thank you. Like it.
Good.
So we actually had a question come in from the audience. So I want to go to that next. And just a reminder to all the rest of you out there, if you do have questions, get them in now so that we have time to answer them with our panel live here. So this person had asked, which industries or portfolios are best being served with a data mesh fabric infrastructure? So I'll open that up to the whole group, whoever wants to jump in on that.
I'll go first. Finance industry always waits and watch, at least in my experience, which technology will come up and be successful, right? Data mesh, if a financial institute does not have anything, then yes, it's a good place to start. But if you've already spent last 10 years building something, let's wait. That's my strategy. I would wait to see where this goes. I would say the technology, what I understand about it, I think would fit very well where you have large volume of either IoT data or customer data, CPG, for example, right? You need to see who's eating what kind of cereal. That is the place where you need to have different kind of data sources. You need to have a policy over it. And that's where the real data science piece comes into picture. Finance, at least all the banks, all the peers I speak to, they are maybe using it, but in a very small scale right now.
And I would add that it seems, I'm hearing about it from a lot of different industries, but it's also related to the maturity of their existing infrastructure. So like IoT data is a really interesting one. I hear manufacturing companies be interested in it, but you have to be a little bit more sophisticated. And some manufacturing companies who haven't made the basic investments first, data mesh is maybe, it's a little ahead for them. So it's more, I think, a function of the maturity. That said, I think companies can also leapfrog and maybe use some of these new modern architecture concepts to get ahead faster. We have a great case study with a company called HelloFresh that implemented a data mesh by using Cloudera. You can learn more about that through Cloudera, but I think that we're going to start to see it manifest in different ways across different industries, and perhaps just be slightly more related to their maturity. The data volumes, I think IoT data in manufacturing is a really good example.
Yeah, in retail, I know there are companies that are embarking on it that are more, at the leading edge and have the investment infrastructure and that. But the other industry I've talked to peers about and heard, a lot of use of it is in media and streaming and those types of industries. So that's where I've seen a lot of use of it.
Great. Appreciate you all taking a detour to answer that. And I hope that that answers your question to the person who had inquired that. So I wanted to get back to our back on track with our planned questions from there. Despite the increasing pressure to produce tangible results, more of half of the executives that we had surveyed said they're still struggling to deliver business outcomes fast enough. Why do you think this is, and what are some solutions? What can be done about this? Hannah, I'll come to you first.
Unmute myself. So complexity, I think a lot of us, or when I talk to people, data and analytics professionals, they're coming up with the vision on the whiteboard with the executives. That's like the fun part and the easy part. What stands between us and delivering on that vision is often, complexity and resources. A lot around the integration integration tax or the integration challenges we were just talking about, and governance. So sort of speeding up our ability to deliver outcomes. I think some of that lies in the platform and the architecture modernization that I was talking about earlier, and being able to speed up our innovation to production cycles. So how quickly can you take an idea and move it into operations? And that also tends to come back to some of those same security, governance, and integration issues, because at a large enterprise, when things need to be really production ready, it just takes longer. So if there's a way to speed up that cycle, then business outcomes can be delivered fast enough. The other thing I'd say is being able to do multiple things at once in parallel. So not having as linear of a development cycle, but being able to invest in a foundation where you can have lots of different use cases going on, so you can deliver more outcomes, and a combination of maybe, some quick wins and some longer term outcomes. But it's sort of, again, I think a lot of it comes back to people and an architecture and tools that really are planned for iteration, for more of an agile kind of cycle, where you can move faster, where you can do lots of different experiments at once, hedge your bets, and deliver lots of different outcomes across the business faster, really resulting in transformation, but that happens in a variety of places in parallel.
I will add that the challenge here, or I would say it's the challenge of seeing deliverable that become kind of realizing the business outcomes, is also lens on how the partnership is between the data team and the business team. I think that the adoption of the data products is extremely important. When we start a project, I often tell my teams that we're not here for building data science project for the sake of building data science project, but to solve a business problem. And the business problem and the way to solve the problem really requires you to engage both the data team and the business team from the get-go. And so we have strong buy-ins from the business at the beginning. They are part of our planning, part of our sprint, as well as part of our pilots, where they test out the products to ensure this is solving their need. We have a lot of iterations, and like Hannah mentions, making sure that we do have short-term MVP products and long-term investments. So those short-term investments and quick wins really buys trust, buys a lot of confidence of our business partners on what data can do, because they're really seeing the benefit of it. From there, we continue to build larger projects, more large-scale data products. But those quick wins and the adoption of those wins and create champions within the business to really share with their fellows of a new way of doing things, leveraging data is extremely important. I mean, we are not just another tool. We're the tool or the products that is going to solve their problem. And the more we can accumulate those wins and those trust, the more we are able to push those. Unless the product is being used, it's not going to create values.
Sean, any final thoughts on that one?
Yeah, from what I've seen a lot in retail, that where a lot of the letdown happens is you'll hear a lot from like the Walmarts and the Amazons and you know, of the cool things they're doing, right? And what a lot of companies don't realize is how much investment they've made on the data side of things. And so you'll have other retailers who think they're in a place that, you know, well, we've got these, you know, a basic computer can do really fancy stuff these days. And so let's do some data science. Okay, great. Do you know what quality your data is relative to that? Right. And so it might be like, we want to solve this business problem. And upon initial look, it looks like something that should be easily solvable because other companies in the industry have solved that problem. But then you go with your own company and your data scientists start digging into the data and realizing, whoa, it's not set up to be analyzed in that way, or it's not rich enough of a data set. We only have 6 months of history and we need 2 years of history to really solve this problem properly. And then leadership gets even more frustrated because then you tell them, we got to wait 1.5 years to answer that question. Well, we got to answer it today. Can't you figure out, isn't there magic math out there somewhere mysteriously in the universe? Just, you guys are so smart. Just figure it out. Find out a way to make statistics bend to your will and give us an answer. And it's not realistic. I think another challenge that you'll often see is that they'll invest on the data scientist side, on the business side, and then they'll keep IT as the data steward managed, but their IT organization will be a very traditional DBA type organization. And you really need the data engineering side of things for a lot of what you can accomplish and want to accomplish, what you read the HBR articles on and all the other, you know, industry rags that you see. Oh, well, look at what this cool company is doing. It's so cool. Look at this. Yeah. And they probably have really healthy data engineering, or at least within that one division of the company, they have really healthy data engineering relationships with data scientists, because there are certain things that just, aside from the point that a lot of data scientists just don't want to be data engineers all day long, and unfortunately a lot of jobs they take, they realize the company's data is so bad that they end up just being data engineers to do half of what they want, right? Everyone will tell you that's a problem at any company. But that being said, when you've got the foresight and the ability to get the investment on both ends of it, you're not going to come up short lacking results, because you'll be able to overcome those hurdles. So those are two of the challenges I see, is one, not understanding whether your data is at a place for you to really answer that question yet. And then if it is at a place to answer that question from a general quality of data and data of the right type, it's, do you have the right support from a data perspective, especially if you want to productionize it? The last thing you want to do with your data scientists is have them build a properly good algorithm, and then they have to build the ML data pipeline as well for it, right? A data scientist might be okay with doing an ML ops like type of move, you know, especially in a smaller company, but to do the data pipeline engineering work as well, that can be tough, especially as a lot of what data science is moving towards these days. The really cool stuff is that you're building algorithms on top of data sets that themselves have been generated by algorithms. And so if you don't have a proper pipeline there and a support staff to support those, okay, well, we built and tuned the algorithms to build that initial data set, and now we want to do further algorithms on top of it, you're not going to succeed, right? And so those are the challenges I've seen.
Yeah. want to move into something else that surprisingly hasn't come up yet, but over half of the respondents to our survey said that dealing with regulatory and compliance issues is a key challenge for them in 2022. Why do you think that is? What do you think it is about data and analytics practitioners specifically? What can you do, if anything, to make regulatory compliance easier on the team? Chun, I'm going to come to you first, if you don't mind. Chun S.
Challenges of unmuting myself. So prior to becoming the head of data science group in the first line, I was actually serving as a model risk management manager on the second line. So I truly understand the importance of building products that is following the regulatory guidance. I think I see a lot of great merits in following the rigid process of model development. One thing that I think it can help with the development, so as the validation process, is to really, first of all, on the platform or the tool size, have a platform that not only take care of your EDA, your feature source, and your experimental designs on data science development, but also has a lot of audible trail, such that this can be the validation team can become your collaborators, or they can really come in and see through your entire trail of experiments. That really helps with finishing your project. Now you have to kick off an entire repetitive projects of walking through the whole experiment, the design with the validation team. They can be along the line. So that's one. Second is on as we are continuing to build more complex machine learning models, one of the major challenges to solve for both our user as well as regulatory partners is on the explainability. So I've always really trying to make sure that our project is explainable, whether it is from post model explainability or building a inherently explainable machine learning models. Keep that in mind. How do we explain our results? How can we help our users understand why are we creating such a scores? How do we explain those scores, especially for the use of more consumer and credit related applications? So explainabilities on your model outcomes, rigorous testing of your model performance, and also ongoing monitoring as a expectations on once the model goes into production, as well as having a platform where it allows our second line and compliance teams to be able to really see through your experimental design process and understanding how do you come to your final model in production.
Hannah, I saw you nodding quite a lot during that. Do you want to share your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think across the board, again, it comes back to having that foundation. So having first of all, it's not, there will be new laws, there will be different laws. So things are going to change. So having that foundation to start from and the processes, which you were talking about a lot, sort of the validation processes, is really critical. So I think compliance is a big challenge because it's scary. It's like the flip side of like high ROI, high business impact things, which are like super high risk, very scary, fine oriented things like compliance. So again, I think it comes back to that foundation governance, that sort of having that common place where okay, laws might change, but I have the flexibility I have the processes in place to do my reporting. I have the flexibility in place to change things, whether that's a hybrid or a modern architecture, whatever it needs to be to change things, expecting that we're going to see new and different laws happen and changes happen. So planning for change in your architecture and platforms.
Yeah, for me, I'm in retail, so I don't have nearly the onerous problems that Chun and others do. Medical, financial, obviously. Obviously, in the United States side of things, with more states coming out with their own privacy laws, it's trying to find within their various, various. I'll call them bullet points of what they are going after. You have to obviously try and California more strict on this, where Colorado's more strict on this. So we're going to follow Colorado here. We're going to follow California there. We're going to follow, is it Virginia that's got the other one, right? That goes live in a few months or something. Balancing that out and figuring that out. Thankfully, we have a great legal department to partner with to help us wade through all those things. But yeah, for us, it's not as complex as what you guys have to deal with, thankfully. But having, my previous company, we were half our base of operations was in Europe. And so dealing with GDPR, very familiar with that. And I think it just changes how you have to think about solving various business problems, because it was always fascinating especially when you wanted to do consumer based research and different models based on who your consumer is. What we were able to do with our US consumer versus our EU consumer was just vastly different. Even with, and I know they changed the name of the CCPA, but I can't remember what the new acronym is, but even with that in place and being followed, it's still very different than GDPR itself. And so it was fast, it's always interesting to see, but then you had to figure out and tune what you had to appropriately to follow the rules, obviously. The one thing I will say is that one thing that the regulatory stuff will really do that, again, speaking of all the problems we've talked about and challenges in these projects that we've faced, the data governance, data flows, data mapping, and understanding of where and what that data is coming from, going to, and doing, companies are going to have to do it now, which is actually a really good thing, because they should have been doing it for data nerds like us. We should have been investing to do that the whole time. You only did it if you were able to convince senior leadership that the extra investment of time and effort was worth it. Now it's kind of like, no, if you want to play in this space and do these things and have these algorithms and have this customer data, you have to do this. And you have no option. And so you're going to invest. So that's one side of it, one side effect that I'm really enjoying.
Great. Well, I know we had much more to discuss, but unfortunately, I think we've just about run out of time. So just wanted to take the time to thank all of you for joining, those of you who sat on the panel, as well as those of you who are listening out in the audience all over the world. Don't forget, you can connect with each of our speakers by messaging them in the platform. We also encourage you to connect with each other on LinkedIn to continue these conversations. Also, a reminder that you can find out more about the Cloudera report we discussed during this session in the resource area. And so definitely take a look at that and get some more of these insights and really interesting information that we gathered through that.
Yeah, I just want to plug that report.
Yes, of course.
We looked at, so that report is not just Cloudera, actually, it was produced by Corinium's editors. So with editorial unbiased, mostly unbiased. But we asked them to look at 5 different industries and look at some of the different trends occurring across those industries overall, and then comparing a bit. So I think it's a really interesting report. It's free. It's a quick read and a quick download. So I encourage you to check that out. We look specifically at financial services, at insurance, at manufacturing, retail, and telco in that report. And then we provide some overall trends as well. So always good to kind of benchmark and get some ideas, even in the sort of language we use to talk about these programs.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of good information. So everyone hopefully can get some value out of that. And thank you all again. Up next, we will be joined by a thought leader from Chick-fil-A, who is going to discuss whether model engineers are a new role or an extension of the data science role. We'll see you there in a minute. Thank you.